I got to mute people. Okay, so let's sit. Let's just sit for a minute. Okay, take a few moments to open the eyes. Okay, so more Emily Dickinson. We can never get too much Emily Dickinson. I actually got a new book of her stuff since the last time we met. I believe I mentioned last week or the week before her very ragged publishing history, that the poems were not published during her lifetime, and then after her lifetime people were fighting over the manuscripts, and then the stuff was published kind of piecemeal and often not really the way she had written it. So this is the definitive. This guy spent years, this Dickinson scholar, going through all the possible manuscripts, all her little scraps of paper, that her poems she'd written on backs of recipes and insides of envelopes, and pulled it all together. And so this is the definitive collection. And he restored all of her spelling, which sometimes is pretty wacky, and all of her completely wacky punctuation. So it's the way she wrote it. So let's start today with this. Everyone seeing my screen? Good. Okay. A bird came down the walk. He did not know I saw. He bit an angleworm in halves and ate the fellow raw. And then he drank a dew from a convenient grass, and then hopped sideways to the wall to let a beetle pass. He glanced with rapid eyes that hurried all around. They looked like frightened beads, I thought. He stirred his velvet head like one in danger, cautious. I offered him a crumb, and he unrolled his feathers and rowed him softer home than oars divide the ocean, too silver for a seam, or butterflies off banks of noon leap plashless as they swim. Okay, let's take our shoes off and run through this. Oh, I have to unmute people. Hang on a sec. Okay. Um, so Emily Dickinson loved nature. She and a lot of people say they love nature, but to really love something or someone, you have to see them. You have to see it. Otherwise you're just, you say, oh, I love this person, I love that restaurant, I love whatever. And if you don't really see it, if you don't really taste the food in the restaurant, if you don't really um, see that person that's in front of you, what you're in love with is just your idea of them, your concept. Um, so the first thing I'm struck with here is how clearly she's not just in love with lots of people say specifically, oh, I love nature, and they've got some idea of being, Bambi out in the woods. But there's a whole lot more going on there. So she starts and this is so typical of her, start with all the language is so simple, right? Look at how many of the words are one syllable words and just plain, blunt Anglo-Saxon words, right? 100 years before Hemingway made it cool, Emily Dickinson understood about cutting through all the fancy polysyllabic words and just the plain, raw Anglo-Saxon. Because it's more like plain, unadorned observation. It's more like there's fewer syllables between you and the object you're observing, if that makes any sense. It feels more like the thing. A lesser writer would have said, uh, you know, uh, a feathered friend came ambling down the walkway, unaware that he was being observed, right? But no, she cuts through the clutter. A bird came down the walk. He did not know I saw. Right? So clear, so simple. And at the same time, do you feel there's some silence in that? Do you feel how silent she is in order to observe the bird without scaring it away? But she doesn't have to say any of that, right? Because she conveys it so simply and so clearly that I always used to tell my students, my writing students, good writing, when you read it, it's like watching a movie. It's cinematic, right? So here we can see this. We see her observing, and we can hear the silence. We can see her how just he bit an angleworm in halves and ate the fellow raw. Right? Clearly, this is not just some sentimental Bambi in the woods concept of nature. Right? To us, the bird, oh, it's the sweet, oh, it's the first robin of spring, right? If you're a worm, the bird is a monster. It's Godzilla. It's Jaws. Ba boom, ba boom, ba, right? So she hints at that. She hints at that.
I noticed, though,
he reminds us. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's interesting, though, that for all the simple words, she didn't use the word just worm. She said angleworm. Mm-hmm. And there's something about the rhythm of it that is, that feels right.
Yes, it's right.
But, yep. It's interesting because she does do these very succinct, direct words, but she's also very aware of rhythm and flow.
Right. Right. Now, interestingly, angleworm, that refers to angling, which is an old-fashioned word for fishing. So this is a worm that I guess the idea, if the bird didn't get him, someone would have put him on a hook and fed him to a fish. He's kind of doomed from the beginning. But you're right about the rhythm, and the thing about rhythm is we can analyze, oh, this is by iambic tetrameter and blah blah blah, but the real thing with rhythm, especially as we get into more modern poetry, where she's kind of the pivot going into modern poetry, is the rhythm's right when it sounds right. You know it when you hear it. uh I can make a very good case for the idea that the most rhythmically perfect poem ever written is the one that, as a little kid, I used to, I don't know what it was, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. or something, I sat down and I heard the following: faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. That, my friends, is unimprovable. It's exactly right. It's exactly right. And the whole rest of it, yes, Superman, strange visitor from another planet, who came to Earth with, what is it, with powers far beyond those of mortal men, and who, disguised as Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter for a great metropolitan newspaper, fight for truth, justice, and the American way. It was the McCarthy era. They had the flag behind it. It was great. But the rhythm is perfect. And then, back to Emily, and then he drank a dew from a convenient grass, right? So, of course, we'd say, then he drank a drop of dew from a convenient blade of grass. But why say that? Why say drop and blade when we know that and we can make it more compact? Another thing I used to tell my students is that there's a formula for the power of your writing, which is meaning divided by word count equals power, right? So if you have a fixed number of words and you can fit twice as much meaning in them, you've doubled the power. Or if you can have a fixed amount of meaning and express that same meaning in half as many words, you've doubled their power. You've doubled the power per word, the impact per word. And again, that's the difference between, most American writing up until around this time, mid-19th century. If you read, Melville, Moby Dick, which is, brilliant, but it's flowery, it's florid. And then you go to Gertrude Stein and Ernest Hemingway, they're more like this. And then he drank a dew from a convenient grass. And notice the kind of droll humor of that word convenient. Here's the bird. He's living his life. He's taking care of business. Okay. Murder a worm. Up a convenient grass. Thank you. I'll have a drink, please. Make it a double. And then hopped sideways to the wall to let a beetle pass. And again, the droll humor, as if, oh, yes, oh, please, sir, after you. He glanced with rapid eyes that hurried all around. They looked like frightened beads, I thought. Now, I believe this is the first time in the poem that we've had a metaphor. Or we'd call it a simile because it uses the word like. Up till now, everything has been straightforward, direct. This is the first time she's introduced a figure of speech. So when she's so sparing with them, again, a lot of poetry, a lot of old-fashioned poetry, and a lot of high school sophomores, when they start trying to write poetry and doing what they think you're supposed to do when you write a poem, they'll just lay on the metaphors. This is like this and like that, right? But she's if she uses a metaphor, it's because that's the most powerful way to convey what she's observing. Right? The rapid eyes, they look like frightened beads. I mean, wow. You've seen that, haven't you? But now you've seen it through her eyes, and you've seen it more vividly than you saw it before. And now that's it. You're stuck with that for the rest of your life. You can't unsee that. He stirred his velvet head like here. This is a little. There's a word for this technical device. I can't remember where the sentence. Usually, a sentence will end at the end of a stanza, but here it continues into the next stanza. He stirred his velvet head like one in danger, cautious. I offered him a crumb, and he unrolled his feathers and rode him softer home than oars. It's once again the sentence is going to continue into the last stanza, but we'll get there in a minute. I want to. Yes, go ahead.
Part of the bird.
Bob, say it again, please.
And rode him. Him refers to the bird?
Yes, the bird. What she's saying is he rode himself. He rode himself home more softly than oars divide the ocean, is the way we would probably say it. Okay, we'll get to that bit in a minute. But yeah, there's no one in this poem but her and the bird.
Right.
Her and the bird together in this just silent communion, her just observing the bird and not, there is the one moment of her trying to interact with it, right? She's been staying reserved. The one moment she offers him a crumb. And how does the bird respond? Flies away.
Yeah.
Flies away. He's not having any of it. It's almost like, okay, lady, now you've stepped over the line, right? You got a little too involved here. You got a little too sentimental. You thought I was going to be your pet. No, get back in the observers section. All the way, but just by the way, throughout we've had, well, interesting, because I mentioned last time Slant Rhyme and how much Emily Dickinson, you remember that great quote from her, tell all the truth but tell it slant, which has a general application to her stuff, which is the really deep stuff, the profound stuff you can't necessarily say outright. You got to say it obliquely through, you're talking about eternity, you're talking about relationships, you're talking about the profound silence of life, but you tell it slant. You're ostensibly talking about looking at a bird. But then also technically slant rhyme means approximate rhyme. And we talked about the fact that exact rhyme makes us feel, we get a little burst of endorphins whenever we hear two words rhyme. That's why politicians and advertisers use them in their slogans, so that you'll associate that burst, that feeling of, oh yeah, everything makes sense. If God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. You'll associate it with their product or their candidate. Right? So notice how it starts with exact rhyme. The first stanza, he did not know I saw and ate the fellow raw. From a convenient grass to let a beetle pass. Right? And then once she sucks us in, now she starts going to the slant rhyme. They hurried all around. He stirred his velvet head. That ain't even close. They both end in D. That's about it. Okay. So slant rhyme doesn't give you that easy feeling of easy resolution, feeling of everything's fine. It's like everything, it's a little bit off. It's a little bit disquieting. And notice when that comes into the poem. It's not that she couldn't think of a word to rhyme with around. She's smart enough to do that. It's that, okay, this is the part of the poem where it's starting to pivot, where we see the bird's fear, right? So is that disquieting feeling, and she subtly underscores that with the slant rhyme. They hurried all around his head. I offered him a crumb. He rode him softer home, right? That's slant rhyme. But she doesn't say he flew away. At the beginning of the poem, she might have said it that way when everything was straight. But things are getting more far out here. And he unrolled his feathers. Can you see that? Not just he flew away. She's observing. She's almost like she's observing it in slow-mo, right? The action of the feathers. And he unrolled his feathers and rode him softer home. So here's our second metaphor. The flapping of the wings is like rowing. And again, that's also in slow-mo. I never noticed this before, by the way. He's in slow motion. It looks like he's rowing through the sky. But when you're rowing through the sky as opposed to water, you're rowing through a soft medium, a silent medium. And rowed him softer home than oars divide the ocean, too silver for a seam, or butterflies off banks of noon leap plashless as they swim. Oh my God. Okay, so are you following this? Rode him softer home than oars divide. Okay, we got that. He's the flying of the bird is the rowing through the sky. Too silver for a seam. What are you getting from that? How do you understand that?
Dean?
Yes.
Oh, you can hear me? I interpreted that as that silvery ocean.
Yep.
That wouldn't be separated by, the silver of the ocean when the sun is on it, so it wouldn't be separated by an oar.
Yeah. I think that, and I think the idea is that if you had someone rowing across the physical ocean in the physical boat, it makes a wake. It makes it splits it, like makes a seam.
Oh,
in the
right.
ocean. But this is seamless. This is frictionless flow. This is, which, by the way, is what life becomes like as you continue to meditate. Just by the way, everything is just it becomes seamless. Your life becomes too silver for a seam, right? And the whole time she's been with the bird, but now the bird has flown away. And she's got a little bandwidth left to expand the vision and consider other flying things in that sky. Or butterflies off banks of noon leap. Right? So we've got this idea of comparing the sky to an ocean, only it's a frictionless ocean, an infinitely soft ocean, an ocean through which all your motion is seamless, right? So then let's invite some more people to the pool. Everybody in the water, right? So here come the butterflies leaping off banks of noon, right? So it's like it seems to be suggesting an image of like kids around the old water hole or around on the banks of the pond on a hot summer day like this at noon, leaping into the water. but the butterflies leaping off their banks of noon, right? And look how she's compressed that. You know, we could say the banks of the river under the noonday sun. No, banks of noon. Leap plashless. Plashless is an old-fashioned form of splashless. You hear that silence? The silence, you hear, it's the sound of one hand clapping. It's the sound of a butterfly diving into the sky. Right? But if you just say silence, we don't get anything. We don't get we get an idea, we get a concept. But look how Emily's giving us the experience of that silence. Plashless as they swim. And you know, in her day, she could have said plashless or splashless. And in fact, when you see this poem printed here and there, you'll see it usually printed as splashless. That's how I found it online. I had to check in the definitive version to see that she really wrote plashless, right? Which of course is much better because it takes out the s, it's more silent. There's the sound of the S that ain't there. That's good.
Can I also
Yes,
just,
please.
I mean, well, it's okay.
Yeah, I wanted to see
Yeah,
that.
I mean, to me, the metaphor of the ocean and the banks of a non-existent river,
Mm-hmm.
you know, she's just showing the emptiness of the sky, and that, you know, these fleeting things like the bird and you
Yeah.
disappeared. The bird and the butterflies are just, you know, these ephemeral things that just whoosh.
Yeah. It's all the comings and goings, like my image is apparently coming and going.
Yes, apparently.
Right. I'm gonna switch to my other. Okay.
Okay.
Lower res, higher reliability, built-in FaceTime camera. We're doing some tech experiments here, folks. Okay. Yeah, it's the stuff coming and going frictionlessly. How many times have you heard me say that while leading meditation? Right? Oh, those birds, the butterflies, that's all. The sounds that you hear, the thoughts that go through, the emotions that go through, and the sky that they're going through frictionlessly, seamlessly, is the space of awareness. That's the real sky. Sky like awareness, as the Tibetans say. Yep. She knew all this stuff. Sitting in her upstairs bedroom in Amherst, Mass, being the eccentric spinster recluse belle of Amherst. Go figure. You know, when you got it, you got it. Anything else about this one? Okay, let's look at another one. Okay, here are two lines that you'll often see quoted from her, which are, this is pretty much all you need to know. I cling to nowhere till I fall, the crash of nothing, yet of all. I cling to nowhere till I fall, the crash of nothing, yet of all. By the way, let me first mention that when I wanted to check this earlier today, and I went to look it up online, and because I know these lines, and I started typing them in. Emily Dickinson, I cling to, and I got a whole bunch of images of people sending out memes, and you can buy needle points and all this stuff of it misquoted. It said, "I cling to nowhere until I fall." Not till, until, right? And I looked and I saw it in about like 20 different listings for this as until. And I thought, God, have I been saying this wrong all this time? But I know, no, I can't. I must be right. Everyone else must be wrong, because the rhythm, this is what the rhythm requires, right? I cling to nowhere till I fall. I cling to nowhere until I fall. That takes all the power out of it. That dead syllable. Can you hear it? Yeah. When it's right, it's right. So I checked it in the definitive version, and I was right. Everyone else was wrong. What's going on here in this is actually a little 2-line excerpt from a longer poem. No one ever quotes the longer poem because it's too challenging. You want to see the longer version? Okay, here's the longer version. More than the grave is closed to me, the grave and that eternity to which the grave adheres. I cling to nowhere till I fall, the crash of nothing, yet of all, how similar appears. That's more challenging. Because if we just look at these 2 lines, I actually used that in one of my books as just a perfect description of meditation. Right? Don't cling. You don't cling to anything. You don't cling to the idea of being in a location, those of you who were in the retreat with Charles today, he talked about one of my very favorite moments in the Buddhist texts, which is from the Vimalakirti Sutra, which Charles introduced us to. It's his favorite text. And Vimalakirti is this great, accomplished, enlightened householder, right? He's not a monk. And all the monks, the Buddha's monks, hear that he's sick, and they go to his house to be with him and to hear him give a Dharma teaching. And the description, and it's because it's one of the later Buddhist sutras, the Mahayana sutras, where they get very poetic and lots of exaggeration. So there's 10,000 monks and 100,000 of this and 100, all these thousands of people go to this guy's little bedroom. And then when they get there, one of them says to Vimalakirti, where are we going to put all these people? There's not enough chairs. And Vimalakirti says, did you come for the Dharma, or did you come for a chair? Right. And I've always, that's the line I always think if I go on a retreat or meditate or something and there's some challenge, things are hard, I go, come on. No one ever said the enlightenment path was going to be all convenient. Right? You got to be ready to put up with some inconvenience. Keep your eyes on the prize. But as Charles pointed out today, this also has a much deeper meaning. That if we really want awakening, if our aim really is to realize the boundless truth, absolute truth, we have to not have somewhere, we have to not be eager to situate ourselves somewhere, intellectually, emotionally, to say, okay, this is it. Now I know what it is. The way when you most people early on when they get involved with this stuff, they start asking a lot of questions, which is good. You got to do that. But you have the feeling of, okay, if I get enough questions answered, I'll understand everything. I'll have this intellectual framework and I'll like sit in the middle of that. I'll know where I am. And to a certain degree, it seems like that for a while. Or emotionally, oh, now I'm finding out, okay, my greatest joy is not necessarily going to be in, watching the football game or, or something. It's this something deeper, this something more profound. It's going to be this. So for a while, it's like you're finding out where the chair is. But as you get really deep into the Dharma teachings, it's more like any chair you try to sit down in gets pulled out from under you. You cling to nowhere till you fall. You have to fall. And in simple, immediate terms, when we meditate, every time you try to find yourself trying to cling to something, okay, oh, here, this is a pleasant feeling I'm having now. Let me hold on to this. Right? Or, oh, this is a nice fantasy I'm having. Let me hold. Anything you find yourself clinging to, let it go, let it go, let it go. And then what happens is the crash of nothing yet of all. Everything somehow, in its own time, it crashes, it implodes. It's nothing, it's just nothing. But there's something very good about it, and it's the deconstruction of all, of everything. It's the, in Buddhist terms, the emptiness, all form is no other than emptiness. It's the emptiness, the boundlessness that's underlies all the boundaries, all the forms, all the structures. Boy, and she just gets that in 2 lines of just 2 powerful, plain language lines stripped of anything fancy. But now let's plug it into the bigger context. And the context seems to be that someone close to her has died. And we know biographically, boy, just she dealt with so many deaths of people close to her. More than the grave is closed to me. The grave and that eternity to which the grave adheres. I cling to nowhere till I fall, the crash of nothing yet of all, how similar appears. Okay. So more than the grave is closed to me. So, we can unpack that a little bit. This seems to mean, okay, the grave is closed to me and also something else. Right? So the grave is close to me. This is not my time to die. I'm not going to have that experience right now. I feel some closeness to it. Someone close to me perhaps has died. So what else is closed to me there in connection with the grave being closed to me, at least for now? The grave and that eternity to which the grave adheres. Right? So the grave is not just, a hole in the ground where you get eaten by worms. It's like a portal into eternity. And she was tuned into this stuff enough to know that eternity doesn't mean forever, long time, millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of years, and then more. That's not eternity. That's just a big bunch of time. But it's the way people think of, oh, I'm going to spend eternity in heaven. I'm going to be up there. I'm going to be playing my harp. Then we'll do 5 more choruses of Jimmy Crack Corn or whatever, and then move on to the next. It's going to go on and on. Somehow miraculously, it never gets boring. But of course, that's not eternity. That's a bunch of time. Would get boring. Just like, infinity is not just millions and millions and millions of miles and, plus. Eternity has nothing to do with time. Infinity has nothing to do with space. It's that which is just completely not in the grid, not in the XY axis of time and space. It's the blank piece of paper on which we draw that XY axis. And that blank paper is this awareness within which you're hearing this stuff right now, this beingness. If we really penetrate to the nature of it. But most of us, most of the time, don't penetrate to that with a lot of clarity. Often, if you're tuned into this stuff, it's when someone close to you dies. I really experienced this very clearly when my mom died. Here's this, I was there with her. I and one of my brothers were there with her at the moment that she passed. And, here's this person, the very first person that I ever met in my life, right? As a baby, everything is just kind of this, mishmash, this continuum of kind of undefined sensory input. And then faces and things start to coagulate out of it, and the first thing that coagulates out of it is mom, is this one that that's feeding you and singing to you. So here's the very first person in my life, and so she's been this location, right? She's been located for me. She's been a person to me for as long as I can remember. And then as she passed, it was so clear that what was kind of clothed in this person, what was manifesting as the form of this person, was the formless, empty consciousness, the awareness, right? But the form, as she passes, the form like melts. I mean, her body, her structure is still there on the bed, but that is like she melts out of it. Kind of like, merging with the sky. It wasn't really visually like that, but the feeling of it, if some of you have been around people at the moment of passing, and even if you're not there physically in the room with them, if you're closely connected with them, really tuned in with them, you may have experienced this because of your heart connection to them. I mean, in principle, we could experience this with anyone's death, but usually someone we have a heart connection to, because the connection is so strong. It's almost as if it was as if she was going through the hole in the fabric of time and space, into eternity. And because of my close connection to her, I could kind of follow her there. I could kind of get the flavor of that. Is this ringing a bell for people at all?
Mm.
Yeah. More than the grave is closed to me. Yeah. For now, Emily. Right? This offer good for a limited time only. More than the grave is closed to me. The grave and that eternity to which the grave adheres. Okay, can you feel that, everything we've been talking about for the last 5 minutes? How it's there in those lines. Only I can't say it with that conciseness, that plain spokenness, because I'm not Emily Dickinson. The grave and that eternity to which the grave adheres. I cling to nowhere till I fall. The crash of nothing yet of all, how similar appears. Right? So there she's describing experiencing that. Experience the meditate, the transcendence, the being able to follow the dying friend into the sky of boundlessness. The thing which we can do, sometimes you hear me when I lead meditation say, hey, buy a one-way ticket, right? We make this assumption usually every time we sit down to meditate that, okay, I'm going to sit here for 15 minutes or half an hour or something. Then I'm going to get up and have dinner. Maybe. Are you going to? Are you going to? There's one time when you won't. We don't know which time, maybe this time. Right? So, and for that matter, not just when you sit down to meditate, right now, you sit down, okay, we're going to do this poetry session till 6 o'clock, and then I'm going to blah, blah, I'm going to watch my TV show that I've been, taping or blah, blah, blah. Maybe you are. We still got 8 minutes. You could still croak, while we're in the session here. Right? So a thing I often recommend in meditation is rather than fight that thing, rather than resist it, use it. Buy a one-way ticket. We've been making this completely unfounded assumption usually when we sit to meditate that, okay, at the end of this, I'm going to get up. Why not balance that out, make the other assumption? This is it. I'm buying a one-way ticket. I'm closing my eyes. They're not going to open again. And and in all seriousness, I really recommend this for a couple of reasons. For one thing, I always say you want to do the fire drill before the fire. Right? There is one time when that's going to be the case. Possibly not today. And you want to have gone, but really assume as sincerely as you can that this is it. So we're not just play acting. So because the more you can, it's like when the kids would do a fire drill in school where I used to teach. If they were going, oh, this is just a drill, they don't take it seriously. It's not a good drill. They lazily walk out of there. If that was a real fire, man, they'd be running out of there. Assume it's a real fire. This is really the time of dying. And I find that the two great benefits of that. One, it's the drill for the time of dying. It's using meditation as a preparation for dying. But the other, it's using dying as an aid to meditation. Because if you're assuming that, okay, this is it, I'm buying a one-way ticket, then when you're there in meditation and you find your mind going, oh yeah, but you start hashing through the conversation you imagine you're going to have with the person later on. Right? Or start going through this situation, this problem from work or whatever. Right? And then, we go, but if in the meditation you start doing that and you go, wait a minute, I don't have to go through my shopping list. What do I have to pick up later? I'm dead. I'm not going to go back to Whole Foods. This is it. I'm free. Hallelujah. I'm not going to have I don't have to figure out how to have that conversation. I'm done with conversation. I'm free. And really, I'm not being funny here. Really, as Joe Biden would say, no, I'm not kidding. Right? You just penetrate to the reality of that, and use it. Anyway, I find that this is very useful, very powerful. You might want to try it out. But certainly, Emily Dickinson seems to have figured that out. How to take all that death she had to deal with. How to take that, bring it back into her own life and use it for her unfoldment of her awareness, for her getting closer to this reality of spirit. Anything else on this one? Anybody can unmute yourself if you want to say something or ask something.
Dean, do you have anything to say about the last line?
Yeah, I think how similar appears. I think that what she's saying is that what she's experiencing, this clinging to nowhere till I fall, this, experience of transcendence, of not having a chair, right? How similar that appears to death. Basically what we've been saying here for the last 5 minutes. I guess, unless I'm missing something. Seems to me that's what that's saying. Okay, anything else on this one? Yep. Okay. All right. So it's just about that time again. Hi, Jody. Nice glasses. Um, okay, I'm very tempted to do yet one more Sunday on Emily Dickinson. I don't know. Can you handle that, or should we? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah. You could just. I mean, we could do Emily Dickinson for a long, long time. She's so brilliant. And I love the fact that her language is deceptively easy to read. It's a lot of poetry. If we were doing, John Donne or something, one of my favorite poets, but we'd have to spend 20 minutes sometimes just getting how the heck is, what does this one line mean? Here, the meaning is clear, but then the resonances, the deeper levels of it just keep going down and down and down. Yeah, Tova?
These are not from this book, so
Correct.
are you able to send it to us? Or...
Yeah, you know what? You can all of her stuff is online. You can yeah, I do have this running this Microsoft Word file I've been making with the poems we're talking about. I can make that available, or you can, when I get around to it, or any of them, you just Google the first one line, especially if it's the first line, you'll find it.
Well, I didn't write it.
Yeah. Okay. But also, yeah. Yeah. You know what? I'll maybe if Yafa, you'll help me remember this. I'll put a link to it in the next newsletter. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, good. So then you can play with these some more. Good. Okay. And the Dharma beat goes on. I want to make sure you all see my shirt today. This was New Jersey, only the strong survive. I spent 33 years in that place, and all I got was this crummy shirt. Okay, so may all beings swiftly stumble into that crash of nothing yet of all. And find that hallelujah. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dean.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Enjoy being.